Chapter 1 The Little Rose. The wind blew faster as the hurricane neared the town. A woman who had blazing red hair on top of her head got out of a carriage. She wore a red trench coat, white blouse, a long red skirt with ruffles near the end, and wet tall brown boots. This woman was Angelina Dalles. However, most people knew her as Madame Red. As Madame Red got out of the carriage, her red hat flew away in the wind. "Angeline," she called. "Angeline, where are you?" She was calling for her 5-year-old daughter. Angeline had left the house to play and run around in the garden. When Madame Red went outside to call her in because of the storm that was coming, Angeline was gone. A servant who usually accompanies Angeline said that she wanted a blanket to wrap around her. So he went to get the blanket, and that was when she disappeared. Madame Red yells, "You fool! How dare you leave her all alone?" She was mostly mad at herself for letting her daughter out of her sight. Angeline had been born frail and sickly ever since she was born. After an accident about 5 years ago, Madame Red and her loving husband was in a carriage accident. As she awoke from the hospital days later, she received dreadful news from her doctor. She was told that her husband had died in an accident and had to remove her uterus. But that wasn't all. Her doctor operated a C-section in order to save the baby along with her. Though she was relieved that her baby was alright, the doctor soon said that because of the operation, the baby was born premature and didn't have enough nourishment. As a result, her baby probably wouldn't survive long. After hearing that the man she loved had passed away and her child would soon leave her alone in this world, Madame Red fell into the dark corners of depression. As days went by, she refused to leave her room for any reason. Servants were ordered to bring trays of food to her doorsteps. She wouldn't answer when one entered to set her meals down, and when they would return with another meal for her to eat, the previous meal would be there and untouched. The doctor continued to visit Madame Red on a regular basis to check on her and the baby. He scolded her for not eating, but was more worried about the baby. He encouraged her to perform skin-to-skin contact so her baby would become closer to her. Madame Red refused for a while until the doctor managed to convince her otherwise. Though she hated that her baby girl was born premature and sickly, she immediately loved her. But when Madame Red knew she would soon have to go back to work, she had one of her servants watch over Angeline until she would return home or was busy. A gust of wind began to blow around, snapping Madame Red out of her flashbacks. Her long red bangs on top of her hair flew in the breeze like a wave. "Damn it," she spat as she walked over to the edge of the bridge she was currently standing on. She gazed over to try and get a better look of the landscape. There was no sign of her daughter anywhere. "I can't see a thing in this storm. Where are you, Angeline?" Madame Red opened the door to her carriage and got out of it, opening an umbrella. She looked everywhere for her daughter, but couldn't find her. She was so worried, but it had started to rain heavily not too long ago. She felt it was best to call the police and wait for the storm to clear until it passed. "Mama!" A faint voice called in the distance. Madame Red's eyes opened wide as she heard this voice. She raised her head, turning in the direction the voice came from. A small figure became a little larger, coming closer to her. When the figure became visible, it was a little girl. This little girl had red hair like Madame Red's, but a little longer and into braided pigtails. She also had red eyes, the same as hers too. The girl wore a cute pink dress with a medium-sized ribbon tied in the back. It also had white sleeves, and she wore white and black buckled shoes. The little girl was running with an umbrella in her hands. Madame Red's eyes widened even more. "Angeline!" she cried, dropping her umbrella and running to embrace her daughter. Angeline jumped into her mother's arms as she hugged her. Madame Red didn't care if she got wet because of the rain. She was just glad that her daughter was safe and here. "Oh, my baby, my sweet baby," she cried more, but then slightly pulled her daughter away. "Where were you?" she yelled. She didn't mean to, but was terrified. "I told you to stay in the garden." Her daughter had sadness in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Mama," she said in a soft voice. Madame Red sighed slowly. "At least you're safe now," she mutters as she hugs her daughter again in her arms. The rain continued to pour down on them. The umbrella Angeline had helped a little with that. Madame Red pulled away from her daughter again. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's go inside and get dried off," she then says. Her daughter nodded. As Madame Red began to stand to her feet, Angeline suddenly says, "Oh, Mama, I found something for you." She blinks. "Oh?" she asks. Her daughter nods again. In her hair that rested behind her ear was a small red rose. Angeline pulled it out and gave it to her mother. Madame Red smiles sweetly as she sees it. "You found this? Where?" she then asks. "In the garden, Mama," Angeline explained. "Do you like it? Isn't it pretty?" she asks. Madame Red pets her daughter's head with a wet hand from the rain. As her hand slowly strokes her daughter's head, moving down to her cheek, she said in a soft voice, "Yes, it's beautiful." Angeline's eyes widen as she smiles at her mother. "But I don't need a rose like that," she then said. Angeline tilts her head as her mother said that, as though she was confused. Madame Red smiled. "I don't need it because I already have a rose that is just as beautiful." Her daughter blinks. "Really?" she asks. "Where is it, Mama? I want to see it." "It's right here, in front of me." She poked her daughter's nose. Angeline giggles when her mother poked her. Madame Red soon joins in the laughter. However, the laughing died down with a low series of coughs. Madame Red looked at her daughter with concern. "Angeline?" She held her daughter as she was covering her mouth and holding her chest as she coughed. "Angeline, are you alright?" she then asked. "Mama," Angeline said in a low voice, trying to control her coughs. "Mama, my chest hurts." Her hands tightened a bit on her blouse over her chest. Madame Red knew it was because Angeline was sickly from the nourishment she wasn't able to get. Worried, she picked her daughter up in her arms. Angeline curled her body against her mother's chest for warmth as she finally calmed down. Her coughing, and breathed slowly. Madame Red gently kisses the top of her daughter's head. "It's okay, sweetie. I'll give you some medicine, then make some hot chocolate for both of us," she said as she began to walk toward their manor house. Angeline slowly looks up at her mother. "With marshmallows and cinnamon?" she asks. Madame Red laughs and says to her daughter, "Of course, my little princess."